Hello, everyone. My name is Cameron,
And I'm Brett.
and you're listening to The Last Alliance, a Rings of Power podcast.
We know it's a dangerous business going out your door, or when choosing a podcast, but we're glad you've joined our adventure as we discuss The Lord of the Rings, the Rings of Power.
And so it begins.
All right, welcome back. This week's episode 7, The Eye. We're going to try and stay on the positive side of things, but I think that we can both agree that we wanted more, right, Brett?
I was going to say that's about all the positive I can say about it is there's room for improvement. I feel like after episode 6, we talked about it last time. We both loved that episode. One of our favorites, if not the favorite, and then a lot of disappointing things in this episode.
Yeah, it made me wonder, are they just trying to fill a quota of 8 episodes, and they were having a hard time making the dividing lines of, what's going to fall into which episode, and this one just became a serious filler episode, I felt like.
That's a perfect description, I think, of what happened. We find out about some characters that should have been there all along, and it just feels like throwaway lines. They're trying to pull the curtain over our eyes on some people they want us to think are dead, but we know can't be dead. Yeah. And it was the longest episode of the entire season, which was even more baffling. Yeah, we didn't need it. But we'll talk about it anyway.
Yeah, we will. Just right off the bat, stuff that, you're talking about stuff that we did not need. For instance, why was it necessary that we start off with the Queen having her vision and then have to show that she was in an accident which lost her vision? Was the pyroclastic cloud not enough to blind a woman? Why did we need to spend that 10 minutes?
I mean, Galadriel woke up like she was freaking Sleeping Beauty. With her arms crossed, she wakes up, stands up, looks around. Never mind all the screaming mothers and children in the background. She just woke up from a nice beauty sleep.
She's been through worse.
Yeah. Well, what's a little pyroclastic flow? And we'll see if between now and the great we even come up with anything great. Cameron, what's your good for the episode?
One thing I did like, and I liked it when I very first saw it, was when King Durin throws in that leaf into the hole and says, "Seal it up." It falls down to the bottom, and you're introduced to the Balrog. And there's an instant connection with, oh, this is the Balrog that drove all the dwarves out of Moria and basically destroyed the kingdom, right? And that's actually a pretty good connection to the Lord of the Rings story, and an interesting, because otherwise all we know about it is that they dug too deep, right? Anyway, it was just a good opportunity for that to come to light. Something I did think about, though, now that we have this mithril connection to powerful light source like the Silmarils, is I wonder if that has any effect on this particular Balrog and how powerful he has become. I don't know.
Ooh, that's interesting. That could be something. I was pleasantly surprised thinking about it that they kept the same design as Peter Jackson in the movies for the Balrog. And we saw a glimpse of the Balrog earlier in the season, but they kept the same design. It looks like the Balrog from Peter Jackson. So that was encouraging to me, because I think that is just spot on. I don't think you can get better than what the Balrog looks like in that.
That's a good point. You don't think that they really had a choice, but they absolutely did. It's not the same organization, right? So that was a good choice on their part to continue the appearance that appeared in the original Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. Good. That was good. Very good. Let's celebrate them while we can. My good, and this one kind of goes back across other episodes because I've realized that I've appreciated it throughout the season. In the movie adaptations of Lord of the Rings, Gimli's kind of this brute, no-nonsense, kind of crass, irreverent character. And Durin in this one is as well, but I think the eloquence with which he makes his arguments is really underappreciated. There's some really good quotes that he has throughout the season. And in this episode, when he's going off one-on-one with his father, King Durin, just for example, he says, "How do you expect me to move mountains if you fall to pieces when I dig a single hole? You speak of greatness for me, but you suffocate in me any ambition, any desire, any thought that does not originate in you." It's very poetic and very different from the other depictions of dwarves that we've had. I think it's kind of cool. It adds a layer and a sophistication to his character that I think is what helps make him so likable as we get this new depth of character for a dwarf.
Yeah, and respectable. And I think that it, is pretty clear that the friendship he has had with Elrond has positively influenced that aspect of his life, right? I think that it's pretty clear that on average, the elves are a lot more eloquent and sophisticated than the dwarves, right? And I think that comes out in Durin through Elrond's friendship.
I like that. I like that they go toe to toe with each other. Like Elrond isn't clearly superior in wisdom and knowledge of how things work. I think Durin can go toe to toe with Elrond. And again, I think it's setting up for an epic showdown when this friendship is torn asunder in the future. Which again is still just a prediction, right? It's we don't know anything, but it sure seems to be trending that way.
Right. So what was your bad?
My bad, and I believe you would agree, is the episode. Just in general. I kept
we have the same thing written down for both bad and great. So
you went ahead and credited the entire episode 7, VI. Yeah. I don't know how to sugarcoat it. I mean, I don't blame any of you if you're listening to just turn off this episode and skip to the next one.
We were thinking about just combining the last 2 episodes ourselves as far as the podcast goes, but
if you're feeling as frustrated as we were about this episode, hopefully you have a home here. We can talk about some of those things together now.
Yep.
We don't have a grade for this episode.
And we do not. We would be, very pleased to look forward to whatever you all might think would be a great from this episode. So let us know. But the 2 of us did not see anything worth labeling great in this episode.
And the Harfoots were backed.
Yep. So, and for once, they weren't the worst thing about it. All right, so let's go to the next little topic here. I've got labeled as potential mistakes, and most of this is on the writer's part, right? But not a guaranteed mistake. I think that there are ways that these could actually work out to be, pros instead of cons. I don't know how this first one is going to change, and doubt that it will, but I think we're both on the same page here that scene where, we have seen Mount Doom explode. We have seen the pyroclastic flow. We have seen minutes by now, like several minutes of ashen, darkened skies scenes.
Home of the orcs.
Yep. And then they feel the need at this point to put Mount Doom dead center in the screen erupting and say, label it as the Southlands, and then as the Southlands kind of goes away and Mordor gets burned into the screen. And it's like, no kidding. Thank you.
It's like the old word art that you'd use on your computer. You could type in a word and it would come up as green and slanted. It's like they did that with Mordor. Was anybody like confused at any point after episode 6?
Here's the thing. For people that were confused, they are the same people that are not going to know what Mordor is.
Right. Oh, cool. Mordor.
Whatever that is. Yeah, exactly. But
And
if you know
build-up-
what Mordor is, you're already there, buddy. And even me, like I said last episode, I was a little bit late coming to the party of realizing, oh, we're about to make Mordor right here.
which is part of the reason why episode 6 was so cool, is it kind of caught you off guard.
Yep. But even me late coming to that party, I did not then need, after 10 minutes of the ashen darkness, to be clued into the fact via visible lettering, this is no longer the Southlands, idiot. This is Mordor. Thank you.
Yeah, the lettering too, the way that they do. I mean, it was so corny. The way they
It
set
was
it up.
like it was in a slideshow presentation, honestly.
What will it be called then, Lord Father? And he like looks up to the sky. He's like, all right, any minute the tech team is going to drop the name in the sky for all the orcs to see too. what kind of Disney Channel original movie is this?
Well, and that's the thing, is they could have done so much more with giving a bigger depth of meaning to Mordor, the word, the place, getting a Dar's perspective on what it was and what it means and what it's for, rather than, what we have all seen Sauron turn it into later on in The Lord of the Rings. They could have just done a lot more to add some depth to it, rather than spend 15 seconds saying, idiot over here,
We're in Mordor now. It's really disappointing because that is the last scene of Joseph Mowley, the actor who portrays Adar. We're going to have a different actor in season 2. And for me, Adar was I think he was the most intriguing character of the season. I wanted to see more of him, and it's just so unfortunate that that's the last bit that we get.
I was going to say, there's definitely more to his story that we want to know, right?
Yeah, and an eventual clash with Sauron again. That surely is going to be epic. The other thing I wanted to bring up with this is, one of the things we loved in the early episodes of the show was the use of the Tolkien maps, and to like set the scene for where we were going. And I just couldn't comprehend how we wouldn't zoom out, pan out, get this bird's eye view, airplane view of the topography and the map, and see Mordor that way. I feel like that would have been even less corny. It would have just been like a take it all in kind of view.
But then you don't get Mount Doom erupting in the background.
Well, you could start there and zoom out from Mount Doom.
If anything, they should have done that, and it should have been as part of the end credits. Like, they should have put the map scene in the back of the end credits, and then done their little Mordor burnout effect.
Yeah.
Like, okay, that would have been a cool place for it,
Yeah. Yeah, what the heck? I came away from that episode just the first time watching, like, who do they think we are?
Yep.
Yeah.
Idiots, obviously.
Idiots.
All right, so I'm gonna put the next bullet point at the end, because I think that there's the most to say about that one besides Mordor. So let's skip over to the next bullet point, which is Isildur. So the issue with this one, right, is we all know at least where Isildur will end up, right?
Yes.
He's not dead. He's not blind. He's not
Spoiler
crippled.
alert. Spoiler alert.
Yeah. For all of yeah. For anyone who did not know it was Mordor 10 minutes into episode 7, spoiler alert, Isildur is not dead. All right. It's just like it goes back to what you said at the beginning of the podcast of this podcast episode, right? Of, just why did they spend the time doing it? And this is one of those that I mentioned at the beginning. Maybe they can bring this back. Maybe they can, have some kind of a creative, like, oh, that's why they did that. Oh, that's nice, but I don't think that anyone is really, the only suspense here is like, what's the storyline going to look like? No one is suspenseful or anxious about, did he make it? Is he alive?
Even into next episode, like he still hasn't shown up yet. Like, what the heck is he doing? Is he just marching around with Waldrig? Is he? I don't know.
Hopefully he finds Waldrig, kills him. Hopefully he finds Arondir and kills him. Honestly, Arondir, good heart, but he should not be a part of any more decision making for the rest of his life, to be quite honest.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about him too. He really bugs me because he, even at the end of last episode, he made Theo feel like, yeah, you shouldn't have given up the hilt. It's okay that you did. You can be forgiven, but you shouldn't have done it. I'm like, no, everyone would have died then.
You are the one who decided to entrust its location to a child.
Yeah, a Rondir needs a Rondir to the head, I think.
Yeah. I guess let's give a little bit of time here for maybe predictions for season 2 with Isildur. What do you think's gonna happen?
Well, obviously he's got to come back. We got a glimpse that Elendil, he still does love his son. I'm convinced that he loves his son deeply and is just trying to draw more out of him. He expects more of him. I hope for the sake of the story that there is a little bit more to it than just him wandering around on a path and they find him sitting next to a bush eating some raspberries in season 2. Is there a possibility that he teams up with Waldrig and the people there in the Southlands and is like, well, I guess this is my new home for a little bit, and kind of gets corrupted a little bit?
Yes. So I think that is my main prediction right now. I think that Halbrand will somehow find him, save him. Isildur is going to think he's still an ally, right? And I think that there might be some time with him and Halbrand Sauron that ends up corrupting him a little bit.
Which the ultimate destiny of Isildur being the one who destroys Sauron.
Well, kills him, but then does not destroy the ring, right? Fails to finish the job.
We're learning that Sauron can be killed multiple times.
Right, because the Maiar basically just inhabit physical bodies, but their actual being is not physical. Anyway.
So Isildur's still out there. Don't worry, anybody. He's fine.
Yep. And my other prediction is I think that they might be trying to use this as a motivation to get Elendil back to Middle Earth. You notice at the end of this episode, Isildur is dead. The queen is blind. They have, won the battle, but seemingly lost the war. So I think Elendil is just like, I'm never coming back here again. And I think that his son is going to be maybe reason for him to come back. And I think they might be playing up the, reluctant Numenorian lord that becomes king later on.
Yep. I hope that there's a purpose to him being missing. It kind of drove me a little nuts buried under this collapsed, burning pile of like molten lava house. And I'm really curious to see how he escaped that.
Obviously, people in Tolkien's universe have a lot higher resilience to heat than the rest of us. So, if anything, that's what this episode was teaching us.
Yes.
If you want to go to lessons learned, lesson learned. Strong capacity for heat resistance.
Yes. Heat resistance plus 12.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and then just a small thing, but when Sadoc is talking to, I'm just going to call him Gandalf, even though it hasn't been officially released, but the stranger, right? About the constellations and kind of giving him a game plan of where to go and, you know, what to do. And he mentions that the constellations that are in the book that he carries around, which have gone through every bog and swamp and, you know, meadow from here to Kingdom Come a million times, that book is over 1,000 years old. And I'm like, no, not possible, not happening with me. What do you think about that? It's a small thing, but something that I was like, no.
That seemed a little dramatic to me. Because
my reaction.
yeah, that too. Just trying to make you feel better. I know you hate the Harfoots so much. I was close to saying that Papa Harfoot's speech was the most inspirational speech out of anyone in this series, because that seems to be a real struggle for our main characters. Here's where I do struggle with the Harfoots. This constellation seems like so important, but there's zero answers to it, even by the end of the episode. And the lore of this book just seems like this red herring almost. I just can't get invested in the constellation and where the stranger's headed. And, you know, 1,000 years ago something happened, and now 1,000 years later something else is happening, and it's evil, and it's the stranger, but actually he's the best thing that's ever happened to us. And
yeah, at this point, honestly, I'm going to be disappointed if this stranger is Gandalf, because I think I'm at the point where I'm like, everyone and their dog is clued on to your scent. Why not just let us know? You know, like, what big secret do you still have to give us? And granted, there is a big secret, because we didn't even know Gandalf was on the scene yet, right? At this point in time.
And by we, you include Tolkien himself.
Indeed.
Shock to the man himself.
Yeah. And, you know, so there obviously is more to the story, and they haven't really, he's been kind of on the, I won't say the back burner, but the side burner, definitely, right? During this season, and we'll probably see more of him next season. But I guess I'm kind of like, I get that the, you know, journey of how Gandalf comes to be the Gandalf that we knew is going to be a surprise. But why are you still holding his identity captive? You know, like I said, to the point that I'm like, it better not be Gandalf, because I'll be pissed that you guys wasted that much time. Like, is it Gandalf? You think it's Gandalf? You know?
Yeah. And we'll talk. I mean, that was surprisingly to me, the season ended not with the Sauron reveal, but with the stranger reveal.
Right.
Which, yeah, we'll get into that next episode.
Yeah. And then, yeah, the last one, and probably mostly because it's the one that we delved into the most, right, was the potential mistake of Galadriel talking about Celeborn. And again, this goes back to the why. Like, why bring him up if he's dead. Obviously, it's to dramatize his introduction into the series at some point, right? But why do it in such a way that is so blatantly like we know he's alive when Frodo and his buddies, the Fellowship, visits Lothlorien in Fellowship of the Ring.
He is the creator of one of the most famous memes. Tell me, where is Gandalf? Like, that's him. That's this guy.
Exactly. So even people that don't really know they might not know him by name. Okay, I'll give them that. They might not know him by name. But anyone who was like, oh, I wonder who this Celeborn guy is. Oh, I didn't know Galadriel was married. Who's she married to? Or, oh, I thought I saw Galadriel in Lord of the Rings with some other dude. Who's that? Anyone who's willing to take 5 seconds and, punch some keys on their laptop is going to find out, oh, he's actually alive and was in Lord of the Rings. So
the question then is, why the heck, and maybe we have the answer, why the heck is he staying away from Galadriel for so long?
Yeah, exactly.
The witch hunt himself. It's like, peace out. I'm going to go check out the real estate in Middle Earth for a little bit.
Probably had to get away from the psycho. You know what I'm saying?
So it will be a surprise when he comes back and we meet him. And
I thought it was hilarious that and it kind of makes you wonder, like, how did this all happen exactly? Because the way she tells the story, it makes it sound like she met him, then she observed him for a few moments, and then called him a silver clam, and that was the last I ever saw of him.
Okay. Somewhere in all of that, they got married.
Well, if that's not the makings of a great romantic relationship, I don't know what is.
Oh,
And so, yeah, to me, I'm just like, okay, so you're trying to dramatize his introduction, but then you totally skimp on the depth of the romantic relationship. Okay, that, makes perfect sense. Let's dull the axe before we try and chop the tree down with it, kind of a thing.
The cynic in me really wonders if this whole bit about Celeborn is the writer saying, oh crap, we're setting up the Halbrand Galadriel ship. Maybe we need to remind people that there's a lost husband out there somewhere before people start getting too excited about Galadriel.
Well, and it is he is an important character, right? He's not just the, trophy husband of Galadriel in Lord of the Rings. He actually is a great warrior and leader during specifically this time of leading up to and including the Last Alliance, or the big war at the end here. Yeah. And so he's definitely going to come. If they're true to the story, at least, he's definitely going to come back and have a big role. So I think they're trying to set up his introduction, but I just think they could have done it in a lot better way.
Yeah. Well, those are some of our frustrations with the episode. We thought
the expanded bad section.
The expanded bad section. I love it. We're getting closer to the end of the season, which means we're starting to talk about things that we don't have the answers to, right? Isildur, Celeborn, what's going to happen with the Dar. We wanted to list off a couple other quick predictions we have. Maybe it's meaningful, maybe it's not, but I think we both think that the Queen will eventually get her sight back. Whether or not that's terribly important to the plot, I don't know.
Yeah, and I don't know if I noticed it the first time around, but how she mentions that she sees gray, like it's not black. She can see there is some light coming into her vision, and I think that that is a good sign, at least, that, especially with all the magic going around in the air in Middle Earth, that she can get her sight back, and it'll probably be at a pivotal moment when, oh, now I see, probably including a story with Pharazôn down the road, I would bet, but we'll see.
Speaking of the Queen, do we feel like Elendil kind of missing his wife, who the sea is always right, drowned her? It seems like we're moving on a little bit from just a strictly loyal admiration for the Queen to, it seems like he really cares about her.
I would not be surprised to know that these two have a past. I would not be surprised to know that these two were at least, close friends, or had a crush on each other at some point in their past. And for whatever reason, probably because she was the princess and he was not, highborn enough, or something, that, that arrangement never worked out. Or maybe he just loved this other girl more at the time. I don't know, who knows? But it does seem that, well, yeah, I guess, are you saying that something is developing before our eyes, or are you trying to say that we're seeing...
That's what I was thinking, was we're seeing something blossoming. You're saying that potentially we're seeing something being resurrected.
I think maybe, yes.
That's
and I think
interesting.
Yeah, I think that maybe, the comments that she makes in criticism to him at the beginning of, being elf lover and whatnot, those could be seen as, if they knew each other beforehand, she's obviously an elf lover too, right? Yeah. And so that could have been code for, I'm on the same page as you, but in a public setting, saving face. Anyway, just a thought. It's not necessary. Either way, what I think is true is you're seeing either a resurrection or a development of some kind of more than subject to sovereign relationship going on.
Yeah. If the story ends up going along with what Tolkien's writings show, it will not end with them together. It's actually quite sad. But Pharazôn ends up conniving his way into a relationship with the Queen so that he gains power. So it'll be interesting to see if that's how they play it out.
But does the Queen die on Numenor?
I don't know. I don't know if she falls with the Great Destruction.
Because I think that they might have room to, yes, that's how Pharazôn becomes king, but I think in the Great Departure from Numenor to Middle-earth and the establishment of Gondor, she might get spirited away by Elendil.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I like both of those characters, so I would not
the Queen and Elendil, or Pharazôn and the Queen.
The Queen and Elendil. So
yeah,
I
me too.
I hope we see more of them.
Yeah.
Speaking of powerful women, Miss Disa is getting a little feisty. She's getting
you see a little dark side of Disa.
Fire in her eyes, and she wants the crown on her head.
Yep, she's definitely starting to, her colors are starting to show of, I married this guy for power and riches, and by dang, I will have them.
And if I've got to, speaking of getting to the top of the food chain, if I've got to make something happen, well, then King Durin better watch himself.
Yes. And, maybe we're just being very cynical, but it could also be that she's just trying to stick up for her husband.
I think we saw a bit more than that in her eyes there at the end. She's out for blood. I would not be surprised if she ends up plotting and carrying out plan to kill the king.
Yeah, on her own or with Durin's knowledge.
I think she would go behind his back to do it.
I think so too. I don't think Durin would ever, unless like the fate of his kingdom was on the line, I don't think Durin would ever knowingly put his father's life in danger.
Yeah, I agree. That's so. Well, there's some good stuff coming out of this episode.
Yeah, I guess so. You're right. You're right.
mean,
The more we talk about it.
I mean, it's all stuff that we're coming up with.
Yeah.
So, for what that's
But it
worth.
gives us a springboard from which to come up with ideas.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just had one more question for you on this section, Brett. What did you think? So when Elrond was thrown out, he looks at the mithril, ponders something for a little while, and then walks off. What did you think was going through his mind at that time?
Not being the elven smith that Celebrimbor is, I don't think he was anticipating any solution. I think he saw that as, well, Durin's my friend. I know he tried his hardest, and this really is the end. And I'm going to hold on to this in memory of Durin.
What do you think he was thinking about as far as like the fate of the elves in the future? Did he think that, well, I guess this means war then because it's our survival, or, your survival? And when it comes down to that, well, watch out.
That hadn't crossed my mind, but I don't know. To me, it seemed like Elrond was contemplating this friendship that had seemingly reached its end. Not in that they were going to break up, but that the elves were going to have to go away.
Yeah, I think it was both. I think that it was both because the mithril is a symbol of both at this time. It's a symbol of their friendship because Durin gifted it to Elrond as, in confidence. But it's also a symbol of the salvation of his race. And so I think that, they were probably, I think he was contemplating both. I think he was sad about, the potential loss of this friendship. But ultimately, he's an elf. He knows that Durin's dad is going to die and Durin will still be alive. So I think he's willing to have the patience to see that through when it can have the space to blossom again. And I think he was thinking more on the friendship side of things. If this escalates, how do I get Durin and his family to safety? How do I ensure their survival?
I think I still don't give Elrond as much credit as you do, which I could be wrong. For me, this episode for him represented I kind of failed in my diplomatic mission, but a realization of, at the end of the day, Durin's still my friend. And it sounds like you think that fierce loyalty to his friend is the number one drive for Elrond.
I do think that it's that's, and he has said in different ways as much, right? It's more important to him to keep commitments and be loyal to friends than it is to cheat, lie, and steal to get what you need or want.
Yeah. Yep.
So I think that, yes, it is extremely important to him, his friendship with Durin, especially in view of how they most recently came back into contact with each other and he saw how much hurt he had caused Durin, right?
Yeah.
And the loyalty that he placed in keeping the secret for Durin, against his king was pretty big deal also. However, I do think that Elrond has a much longer perspective than we do, than Durin does, and I don't think that he was particularly concerned with their friendship. I think he knew that their friendship could survive however long it took for Durin's dad to finally die. And it probably saddened him the time that it would have to take for that to happen and the years that they would miss out on. But I think ultimately he was, thrown outside, walking back to Linden. What do I say to the king? How do I spin this to get the outcome that is the best for everyone? I think that was probably more, and this is just my opinion, but I think that was probably more on his mind because that was the alligator closest to the boat. Because nothing really had happened between them, right? Between him
Right.
and Durin.
No.
So
They leave on terms knowing that they both did everything that they could and needed to do.
yes, so given the opportunity, that would be an immediate relighting of an ember,
Yep, you're probably right. Well, as we wrap up, wanted to hit just a couple more miscellaneous items here. We've talked a lot about throughout the season of is Sauron a master manipulator? Is everything just falling perfectly according to plan, or is he kind of using the cards that are dealt to him? One thing we've asked is, has Sauron at any point in the season ever lied? And Stilson, you think you found an instance where Sauron Halbrand has stated his first all-out lie?
Yeah, and to be clear, yeah, like Brett said, it's an all-out lie, right? Like everything else has been from a certain point of view the truth.
Yeah.
If you mean a certain thing when you say that, then I guess it could be considered as falling within the realm of truth. But this one from this episode was the first one that I noticed, at least in rewatching these episodes. Maybe it had happened earlier and I just didn't catch it, but he says, "I will not abandon these lands and condemn them to burn." Well, true, you won't abandon the lands, but you definitely will condemn them to burn because thousands of years down the road, we still see it's just covered in ash around here. So, maybe and Brett, I think you were mentioning earlier that maybe his intention at this point in time was to do that, possibly. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I could understand a reality where the writers are saying, hey, he is all in on teaming up with Galadriel and coming back and ruling the world with her and healing Middle Earth. That's what Adar said his goal was, and then he realized that it was getting a little too fanatical, and that's when he jumped ship. So maybe Halbrand Sauron is being somewhat truthful in that. But
and I do think that is his plan A right now. Like, I can buy into that if he can get Galadriel, he'd be happy to have her as his, partner, mate, whatever. But I still think that in order to do what he wants, he's going to need an army, and the Southlanders are not it. And, where do you go after that? The dwarves? Okay. Well, if you can get them to come out of their mountain, sure, that'd be great. But the obvious answer is to kill Adar and take his army, right?
Yep.
And for that army to be, very successful, they need a place like Mordor where it's dark all the time and no sun ever gets in. So that's why I'm like, even if you are going for Galadriel, I know you still want to be king of the world, buddy, and you need an army to do that. And one that, if not more powerful, at least more, numerous than the elves. The only thing like that is the orcs.
Here's an argument for it being a lie. This symbol that has been going around for 1,000+ years, the symbol of Sauron that's on the sigil, is a map of Mordor. It is a key to create this dark land, Mordor, from the very beginning. From the very beginning, Sauron has wanted this land to burn and to be a dark, forsaken land. Yeah, just my 2 cents there. I think from the beginning, this has been the plan. So when he says, yeah, I'm not going to condemn this land to burn, I think that's a lie.
Agreed. And he probably made the plan with Morgoth back in the day, right? So
And that's what we're told, is that it's essentially the succession plan for when Morgoth fails.
yeah,
This is how Sauron's going to rise to power.
right. All right. Next and probably last topic for the episode. What were your thoughts on kind of the morality or of King Durin's policy to refuse that deal that Elrond offered him of the 500 years of timber, grain, and all that supplies from the elves, which would also accomplish have the effect of saving the entire elven race. King Durin obviously shuts it down, and you can explain why, but what did you think about his decision and his justification for that decision?
My first reaction watching it the first time was, I'm not going to be around for 500 years. I don't need 500 years. B, I don't particularly need any of that. We're doing pretty good on our own right here, right now. I was like, I don't think King Durin sees the need to risk his people, especially if he believes that there is a darkness and a shadow deep in the mountain that they need to avoid. I was kind of on Team Durin.
Yeah, do you think he knows that there is a Balrog down in the depths?
I think he knows that there's something down there. Even if that something is just the unknown of what darkness is down there. It seems to me that there's a bit of fear in his eye. I mean, he's a dwarven king, for heaven's sakes. Like, rocks and mountains and underground is who he is, but there's a hesitancy to go too deep.
But you don't really see that. Counterpoint to that is you don't really see any such hesitancy with the dwarves in The Hobbit in the Lonely Mountain.
Right.
They are like, give it to me, give it all, give it now,
Yes. Yeah. So maybe Durin does have an inkling that there is something specifically in his mountain.
That'd be an interesting thought, if he kind of knew that there was something down there. And that's another thing, like, we know that the Balrog is down there, but how it got down there,
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
It was not born down there, obviously. So it would be interesting, and maybe they'll explain this, but it would be interesting to find that out. And maybe that is some kind of, kingly secret that is passed down from generation to generation. So, all right, I will grant that buyout for King Durin. I was kind of on the other side of the coin, though, initially, watching it. I think that he was he saw the opportunity that, wait, you're telling me the elves are dying, and the elves are easily our greatest competitor on this Middle Earth? Perfect. Sounds great to me. And like you said, we got enough grain, we got enough timber, we'll find it. Not that 500 years of great elven timber and grain and all that kind of stuff wouldn't be a boon to him. I think it would. Like, that's the kind of thing you can go and start another mountain colony on, grow your empire. But I think that the way I took it was, I think that he just saw the opportunity for his race and his particular kingdom maybe to finally be on top. In every way, the elves were always going to be the superior race as long as they were on the earth. And I think that he kind of looked at it like, okay, I can have 500 years of all that supplies and this great alliance, great in quotation marks, or I can wait maybe those 500 years or however long it takes for you to fade into nothing, and then I can have the rest of time with all of those forests and fields that you promised me for 500 years.
Yep. Yep. There's zero respect for the elves on his part, and there's kind of a giddy hope that the fate, the predetermined fate that wiser beings have foreseen, he really hopes that that fate includes the elves dying off sooner rather than later.
Yeah, he kind of just says like, "Oh, it must be meant to be." The fate of the elves was decided long ago by those that are wiser and farther seeing than us, and defy their will at peril. Which I thought was an interesting connection. Obviously, that he's talking about the Valar, right? And I
Yep.
thought it was an interesting connection to the Númenóreans. The Númenóreans defying their will at their peril. I thought that was an interesting connection, especially within the same season.
Yeah, and we do know that the dwarves, at least the Khazad-dûm kingdom, Durin's Bane, the Balrog, does come and wreak some havoc. But
Yep.
that it'll be interesting to see how it plays out because we know the Balrog comes about because they decided to dig too deep.
Yeah. One last prediction for you before we close out this episode. How much more Mithril do you think they're going to get, first off? And what do you think they are going to end up doing with all of that Mithril? And how do they stop the blight that is going on with the elves?
Well, that's kind of the whole point of the next episode, right? Is they find a way to alloy the mithril into these rings of power that are supposed to help heal Middle Earth.
Okay, so you're thinking that the rings of power are sufficient to stop the fading into nothingness of the entire elven race?
I think that's what they're hoping.
Okay.
I could see the mithril then being used for. I mean, man, we're setting Disa up so much, and if she becomes the queen who says, "Yep, mine the mithril," does she become a key player in getting the dwarven rings of power forged?
Well, so that's what I'm wondering is Mithril in all of those rings, or is it just in the elven rings? Because it did not take much. Like, they put in Elrond's little nugget, and that was sufficient for the 3 elven rings,
Right, right.
So I'm wondering, like, how much of that Mithril do they get out, and what do they end up doing with it besides the nugget that Elrond gets and the chainmail skirt that ends up with Frodo and the hobbits.
Yeah, I wonder if they make it a full-on enterprise. We start just seeing the greed just completely corrupt the entire kingdom.
Well, and I wonder, is there going to be some kind of exposure ceremony that they try and set up down the road for all the elves to, get in on this light from the Mithril? Possible.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Especially leading up right into the Battle of the Last Alliance.
Yeah. So I think this episode actually wasn't so awful. It's given us a lot of things to think about. A lot of good predictions.
It did, yeah. It did give us a lot of things to think about, a lot of things to criticize. But I think that I still stand by what we decided at the beginning of the episode in and of itself, not the greatest.
Right.
We had to, come up with those things to talk about. The part that was good, though, was the Elrond Durin story development. I think that's
always is.
Yeah, that was the best quality content that came out of this thing.
And I believe we say goodbye to Durin and the dwarves in this episode. We don't see them in the next one. So until season 2, farewell to Durin, Disa, and King Durin. We look forward to picking back up with them next season.
Sorry to interrupt you, but along that note, they saved the climax of the Gandalf storyline, the Stranger storyline, for the last episode. To me, they should have ended that in this episode. That's what this episode should have been centered around, as well as the post ash cloud
Yeah.
story. And then they should have saved the Durin and Elrond along with the
Sauron
finale for the end. Because that's way more developed and way more important to the viewers at this point, right?
Right.
Because the Stranger storyline, I mean, he's barely gotten to the point where he can put sentences together. So it's not like we have this huge connection and anticipation yet, besides, like, just tell us he's Gandalf. Sorry to cut you off.
At the end of the day, our quote of the week sums everything up quite well. It comes from Sadoc as he's being bullied into going on an expedition off trail. And he concludes wisely, "It doesn't matter. We're all going to die anyway."
I think I said the same words when I finished this episode.
And unfortunately for Sadoc, that was more prophetic than he probably hoped it would be.
Although he had an honorable end. Finally,
for a Harfoot, you might say.
Finally, a Harfoot doing some honorable business.
Yeah. We'll get Sadoc's swan song, a Halbrand Sauron reveal, a Stranger Gandalf reveal, maybe. We don't know. That's all coming up in the final episode of Season 1. Join us next time on The Last Alliance, a Rings of Power podcast.
Thank you for joining our fellowship on this episode of The Last Alliance, a Rings of Power podcast.
And if you enjoyed this episode even half as well as you should have liked, or liked half of it half as well as it deserved, please subscribe, comment, and share.
We'll see you next time.